My late dad's gift revealed my husband's true colors, and his parents' greed. Okay, buckle up, because the last few months have been an absolute roller coaster of grief, betrayal, and bizarre ninja-themed inheritance drama. You won't believe what my husband did after my dad passed away. I'm still reeling. After my dad's funeral, it felt like my world was crumbling around me. Justin even threatened to, well, let's just say he made some terrible, controlling demands regarding our future together, and even hinted at ending our marriage if I didn't agree. I couldn't help but laugh a dark, hysterical laugh, I'll admit. Let's go live with my parents starting today. He practically chirped, completely oblivious to the gaping hole my dad's death had left in my heart. They're your parents, so there shouldn't be any problem, he declared. My husband just blindsided me with this idea, and I was shocked and almost burst into tears because I never anticipated it. I couldn't help but wonder, isn't this way too sudden? My dad just passed away, and it's only been a few days since his funeral. I was still drowning in grief after he fought a long, hard battle with illness. Despite all the soul-crushing sadness that hung in the air like a suffocating fog after the funeral, my husband decided we should just uproot our lives and leave our home. We were headed to a villa my dad left for me in his will. Imagine my utter disbelief when we got there. I found out my in-laws were already there, practically unpacking and making themselves at home. My name is Natalie, and I'm 33 years old. I work as a designer, and until recently, I was happily living on my own. I've been married to Justin for 3 years now. My career is going well, and I'm recognized as a talented designer. I earn a decent salary, and the apartment we shared was in my name. My mom passed away when I was in college, and last year, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He went through treatment, but it was relentless, and he eventually passed away. The doctor told us to prepare for the worst. My dad was everything to me. When I found out he was sick, I was completely devastated. Watching him fade a little more each day was agonizing. I couldn't sleep because I was consumed by worrying and anxiety. My husband kept asking about my dad's health, but it felt hollow, like he was just going through the motions. What did the doctors say about your dad's sickness? Is he getting any better? Should I, as your husband, go see him? He'd ask, sounding almost impatient. Deep down, I didn't feel like he genuinely cared. It seemed like he was just waiting for my dad to pass away. Before, my husband used to be insecure because I earned more money than him. I longed for him to be proud of my accomplishments and support me during such a difficult time. But instead, he was always trying to compete with me, desperately wanting to be better than me. My dad, bless his heart, told us not to worry about him and to focus on our time together as a couple. But I think we should visit him while we still can, I insisted. That way, we won't regret it later. My feelings towards my husband started to sour. In the beginning of our marriage, we were genuinely happy together, but now, I realized that the loving husband I once knew had vanished. It was hard for me to accept. My husband works from home, and I was planning to work from home too after becoming independent. Even though the hospital was nearby for me, my husband stayed home all day, leaving all the chores for me to do. I felt like I was drowning, trying to juggle work and taking care of my dad. He only seemed to care about himself and didn't consider my feelings at all. Living with him made me realize how little he understood me, and I felt incredibly lonely. After my father passed away, we had already sold our family home, as we had discussed with him before. I was a whirlwind of activity, consumed with funeral preparations until we headed to the funeral hall. Justin, please help me, I pleaded, but he brushed me off. My frustration with my husband grew as he seemed distant and disinterested during this incredibly difficult time. His attitude had completely changed, leaving me feeling even more saddened and isolated. On the day of the funeral, he spent a significant amount of time chatting with his parents. Despite the funeral procedures being handled smoothly, my husband suddenly suggested that we move in with his parents, almost as a joke. But I couldn't believe he would even suggest such a thing, especially after the devastating loss of my father. Live together where? We don't have any spare rooms in this apartment, I exclaimed, reminding him that one room was already dedicated to his work materials. Then, he casually mentioned the villa I had inherited from my father. I was taking a bath at the time, trying to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos. That villa held such special memories of my father, and I wasn't ready to just hand it over. But my husband seemed completely unconcerned about my feelings and continued to push for his parents to move in. Despite my vehement objections, his parents had already made plans to move, and there seemed to be no room for negotiation. Whenever I spoke up, my husband didn't seem to like it. He accused me of being selfish and said I'd neglected our home because of my father's illness and frequent visits. His words were like daggers, and they made me feel like my entire world was crumbling. Now that your father is gone, you need to listen to me, he said coldly, as if I was a child being scolded. He complained that my father's illness had dragged on for too long and that it had been hard on him, too. His utter lack of empathy for my father and me cut deep. I remembered how much pain my father had endured during his illness. At that moment, any love I had for my husband seemed to evaporate into thin air. It hurt even more to realize that my husband was more focused on getting his hands on the villa than grieving my father's death. Despite my warnings, my husband was determined to move his parents into the villa. I reluctantly decided to go along with it, but I couldn't hide my sadness. I packed only the bare essentials and left our home, telling my husband I would come back for the rest later. I couldn't bear to exchange any more words with him. It was painful to see my in-laws moving into the villa, seemingly without any consideration for my feelings, but I followed my husband silently, refusing to accept that my special place would be taken over by a selfish desire. Even though it's technically called a villa, it's just a regular house by the sea, but it's conveniently close to the city center. As I stepped out of the train station, memories of my childhood flooded back. I remembered when my mother was still alive, and after I fell asleep on the train, my father would carry me home on his back. The sight of the familiar scenery brought back those bittersweet memories. When we got to the villa, my in-laws were already there. I felt a surge of suspicion because it seemed like my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. The idea that they had planned to move in without me even knowing filled me with unease. They couldn't stop praising the villa, completely overlooking the fact that my father had just passed away and only seeing the villa as a luxurious house. My husband joined in with their insensitive comments. I sighed deeply as I prepared some snacks, feeling frustrated and completely alone. As I observed my husband and in-laws, memories of precious moments with my parents at the dining table felt tarnished. Despite my discomfort, I decided to keep my feelings to myself and endure the night. However, the next morning, the peaceful atmosphere of the villa was shattered by my mother-in-law's loud scream. I quickly realized something must have gone wrong. As I woke up, I saw my father-in-law sprawled on the floor. She was clearly shaken by the sudden incident. My husband and father-in-law didn't seem to understand what had happened. Despite this, my mother-in-law was convinced that the floor had given way. Seeing their utter confusion, I suggested, "Have you tried stepping on the part of the floor with a slightly different color?" All three of them were taken aback and focused their attention on that spot. Stepping forward, I used my slippered foot to press on the differently colored section. Click. "Well, what was that?" my mother-in-law asked. "Step if someone stepped on it unknowingly. See, the floor sinks a bit." "Wait, that's dangerous," my father-in-law exclaimed. "Is there something wrong with this house?" My explanation seemed to surprise and worrying them. I calmly clarified, "It's not a problem with the house. My father intentionally installed it like this." "Why on earth would he do that?" they exclaimed, puzzled. "It's a feature of what you might call a mechanical mansion, or a trick house. You see, my father was a big fan of ninjas. This villa was his pride and joy, and he loved adding all sorts of clever mechanisms to it. As a child, I often watched them work on the house. Mechanisms all over the villa, a shelf you shouldn't touch, a door that only opens in a specific way, hidden doors. This villa is a testament to my father's dreams and ingenuity, developed over many years." I continued, "I have no trouble navigating it, but it's a different story for my husband and in-laws, who are unfamiliar with them. I did warn you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also told you it's a place filled with memories of my father. My father's intense ninja obsession is well known among our relatives. It's surprising that you didn't know about it." My husband claimed he hadn't heard, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally stunned by this revelation. With our apartment lease already cancelled and nowhere else to go, amidst the chaos, I couldn't help but chuckle seeing them on the ground. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, not entirely sincere. They seemed completely overwhelmed by the villa's quirks. Even explaining the dangers of the traps fell on deaf ears. "This isn't a big deal. We'll get used to it," my husband responded confidently. Acknowledging his comment, I said, "I'll head back to the apartment to prepare for our move." However, in reality, I had no moving preparations. I planned to take a few days off and spend time sorting through my father's belongings. As expected, my husband and in-laws had enough during that brief time alone. I found comfort in solitude and began to see things in a more positive light, making plans for my future. Before long, my father's villa became a small tourist attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion hidden in our residential area. When the villa was occupied, my father had listed both the villa's and our old home's phone numbers in the news. However, all inquiries came to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was able to handle calls from foreign visitors who didn't speak our language, but my husband and in-laws couldn't understand foreign languages at all. On top of dealing with the stress of constantly worrying about the traps, unexpected visitors, and handling calls in languages they didn't understand, they were exhausted and sleep-deprived. "Why don't we all live in this apartment together?" "Think about it," my husband suggested, desperate. They had hoped for my father's passing to take over the villa, only to give it up after just 2 days. That's when I handed my husband the divorce papers. There's no way we can live together from now on. If you understand, please leave quietly. My main reason was that I couldn't forgive him for disregarding my feelings and acting insensitively without discussing it with me or giving any explanation. My husband had made the decision for us to live with his parents. He left all the chores to me and seemed indifferent to my feelings. He acted selfishly and secretly decided to move in with his parents. I couldn't see myself continuing to live with someone like that. What? You used to love me? My husband's question, filled with his usual cluelessness, made me laugh again. Do you think I could love someone who wished for my beloved father's death and would rejoice when he was gone? I asked, incredulous. I handed him the divorce papers and drove the three of them out of the apartment. First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone has a problem. My husband raised his voice. Natalie, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. I reminded him that the apartment was under my name. However, I had already decided to cut ties before they could try to persuade me otherwise. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they now live in a cheap, low-quality apartment and are struggling to make ends meet. The previous apartment was better, was a sentiment my husband and in-laws often repeated. At first, my husband felt guilty and apologized frequently. However, as time passed, he became increasingly resentful of his parents. They were rarely able to hold down jobs due to their age, eventually leading to constant arguments and a strained family relationship. The walls of the apartment were thin, and even when they received noise complaints, they didn't apologize. It seems like they might need to find a new place to live soon. While my husband used to enjoy working from home, the current apartment didn't provide the luxury of a dedicated workspace. Unable to focus on his job, his reputation and sales suffered. The in-laws realized their biggest mistake was allowing their son to control their decisions. In their frequent arguments, they'd say things like, "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this situation. You should have checked properly," he'd retort with, "Don't blame me now. She's the one who kept important things secret." The mother-in-law would then chime in with, "Shut up. If you had communicated properly with your father." The father-in-law lamented, "I never imagined we'd end up like this because of our son. I will never forget that." After the divorce, I made significant strides in my career as a designer. To cope with my father's death and all these events, their popularity grew rapidly. A major cosmetics company reached out to me. To my surprise, I felt this work would honor my father's cherished memory. Of course, I eagerly accepted the project and poured myself into it. In the end, I began organizing tour schedules and, with a few adjustments, soon the house garnered significant media attention. Additionally, online articles about the house were translated into foreign languages, garnering support from international fans. I'm committed to maintaining this magical place for years to come, particularly popular among local children, who often exclaim, "Is this the legendary mechanical house I've heard about? Where are the tricks? Show us." With the help of local volunteers, precautions are taken to ensure the children play safely. Foreign tourists are often amazed by features like the hidden floorboard doors, exclaiming, "Wow, this is incredible. I'm so moved to experience such a unique place. What other tricks are here?" Despite losing my father and going through a divorce over the inheritance of the villa, I believe the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has transformed into a memory-filled destination shared with love. Personally, I've undergone a profound transformation, moving forward with renewed optimism and hope. So, Reddit, after hearing everything, do you think I handled this situation correctly? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspectives and opinions on how I navigated this mess. What would you have done differently? Or do you think I made the right call in divorcing Justin and embracing my father's legacy, even with all the unexpected drama that came with it? Your feedback is really valuable to me, and I'm eager to read your thoughts on the entire situation and whether I could have handled things differently in any way, considering the intense emotions and the complex family dynamics involved.